3. To the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying. Sipping low key. I'm sipping low key and honest. Flying rider. I get those goosebumps every time. I'm around. Things I'm on to make everything go fine. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around me, throw that to the side. I get those goosebumps every time.
Up the mugs.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. We're back. We are back. The Loaded Boys are back in town because International Week, 2 weeks, is over. It's done for now, anyway. And we're back to football finally. But great to be talking football, watching football. This is what we love to do. Club football, anyway. But look, boys, how you doing? Daz, Chris, we're back in business. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm just glad that both you guys are still alive. You went through the mill there. Sick notes all around. I thought I was going to have to be recruiting for new Loaded Mag members, hosts, but no. Glad you're here. Hopefully I don't get it now as well. And Adam might have had it as well, but we'll get to Adam in a second. But all good with me. Looking forward to the proper football being back and getting back into the Premier League. Chris, how are you?
Yeah, much better, mate. Much better. I was saying to you, wasn't I, before the show started? Like I've been like a kid at Christmas in the last 2 or 3 hours. I was walking around the shops with Lisa, and I was going, do you know what? I feel all right. I actually feel okay. I forgot what it feels like to feel normal because the past 8 days I've just felt horrendous. But yeah, really starting to feel myself now. And do you know what? Pete, you hit the nail on the head. Like, so glad that the club football's back. Like the international week, that always makes me worse because I miss my weekend footy. So really looking forward to having Adam on tonight. I'm really looking forward to talking a little bit of Newcastle rather than internationals. But Pete, how are you doing, mate? How are you feeling?
Yeah, feeling good. Finally, after probably about a week. But yeah, get through the last 2 days, half term, week off, rest and recover. To some people's disgust. I always get this wrong, Daz. But look, hey, the life in education, this is what it is. But other than that, good and really glad to be back to talk football again with you boys. And we have a fantastic guest to talk football with, and it's a massive game on Saturday, St. James's Park. Brighton come to town, and of course, the only way we do this on Loaded Mag NUFC on away days is we get the best guest in from the opposition. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome back. You'll have seen him if you watch Top Table Talk. Together, BHA's own Adam Edwards. Let's bring him in.
Welcome back, Adam.
Hey gents, you were hoping for the best to come on, but they weren't available, so here I am. I'm glad to be here as always. Looking forward to chatting.
Never. No, it's always a pleasure to have you on, Adam. And look, I think we'll have a fair bit to talk about, no doubt about it, because it's a big game. And look, we might as well get into it now. Sitting pretty much next to each other in the Premier League table. Are we equal on points? We are. We're equal on points and on goal difference. You've got a couple of extra goals. So you're sitting quite comfortably in 6th, and we are in 7th. From my perspective and from our perspective, is that where you expect it to be at this point in the season? How are you assessing things? I think I might have asked you this before on Top Table Talk, but we had 2 weeks to kind of digest the beginning of the season. How are you seeing it, mate?
It's been a really mixed bag, and it's been such a weird season to predict. And I feel like our run of form recently hasn't been too dissimilar to yours, where you've had a few kind of uninspiring results, right? And I don't think you guys have won now for one calendar month. I know that's not really fair to say because we just had an international break, but we had a period of time where we hadn't won since the second week, since we beat Man U. And we played, obviously got the draw against Arsenal, but then we couldn't beat Ipswich, we couldn't beat Forest, got battered by Chelsea, and then I don't know what happened in the Spurs game, but stuff happened. So it's been such an up and down season so far. It started off really well, and I think it deceived us a little bit, and then it really came back down to earth with that Chelsea game. Spurs has given us a bit of hope, but this game's going to be quite important and quite telling for what happens for the next few games, because I think I've mentioned this before. Like, we're still in the midst of a really tricky run of games. It's you guys that we got to play away. We do have I'm not going to say an easy game. We have a game against Wolves. Then we play Liverpool twice, and then we play Man City. So we're in the thick of it right now.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and you know what? It's really interesting you said that, because boys, I'll come to you. We've got our own tricky set of fixtures coming up in the next few. Looking at it, I'll drop it on the screen really quickly because I do have the Brighton fixtures as well. But just while we're talking about it, we have our own set of tricky fixtures. If you can see there, of course, we've got you boys coming to town on Saturday, and then we have a really difficult trip. We don't do well away at Stamford Bridge, but we go to Stamford Bridge. In between that monster game on the 2nd of November, we also have Chelsea in the Cup. So we have them back-to-back away at Stamford Bridge, then on the Wednesday, I believe, in the Cup. And then is a massive game when Arsenal come to town. And then just to kind of solidify that, if Wolfie has his own way, it's a top table clash with Forest, a ground that we've already won at this season. But look, Daz, Chris, I'll come to you on that, because look, Adam's talked about his really difficult run. We've got a difficult run within ourselves as well.
Yeah, we have. If we don't beat Wolfie's Nottingham Forest, we're shutting down top table talk because we would never hear the end of it.
I agree. I'm backing you on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you do. But yeah, no, we said I think at the end of our last match reaction show that this is our season defining these next couple of games, because like this is a 6-pointer really against Brighton, because we're both going to try to challenge for European spots, and then into the game with Chelsea, who again is another 6-pointer, and then where if that doesn't go well, everything turns to the cups, and if we get knocked out by Chelsea, we only have the FA Cup to. So yeah, it is critical, a critical point to the season in between the end of this international break and up to the next one. It was really telling to see how our season pans out, really.
Definitely. Chris, I'll come to you before we then reverse back to Adam with regards to his fixtures. Confident that we can pick up points within this?
I don't know whether the word's confident, Pete, but I would say I'm seeing it as a challenge, and I think it's there's an opportunity for us here, because yes, Brighton at home is not going to be easy, but you're still confident in a sense that that we can get the 3 points. But then if we follow that up with decent performances and hopefully some points away at Chelsea and then at home to Arsenal, all of a sudden the season looks completely different. So I'd say, rather than confident, I'd say it's more of an opportunity. If we can play at the way that we know we can, and if we can hopefully back up the performances that we had against Everton and also Man City, there's no reason why we can't come away with this with a few points. And correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, I think our December actually looks quite decent. So if we can get through this difficult November period, December looks a bit more promising.
Well, we finish after Forest. West Ham come to town. I actually believe, it's really weird, I have to speak to Lawrence about this, I think we're the first time in November that West Ham leave London. West Ham have had pretty much every game in London, either home or away, up until they come to St. James's Park in November, which I just find it's a wild set of fixtures. But that's their first trip out of London where they come players. I believe that's right. Could be wrong, but I believe that's right in the Premier League. and then we finish off in November.
By the way, Pete, on a Monday night as well, which could be significant.
Absolutely. But you're right, Chris. You know, obviously, we don't start easy. Liverpool, we deserve to. We owe them one, as we've talked about before. As you can see, it's on Prime Videos. They've mentioned
an evening kickoff again on a Wednesday night.
Yes, definitely. Brentford away, Leicester at home. Got to win that. And then you've got your Christmas fixtures: Ipswich away, Villa at home, Man United away. And then we start the new year with Spurs away. So you look at those fixtures, and there are a lot of winnable games in there. You're absolutely right. But just looking at Brighton's for a second, coming back to you, Adam. You know, what are your expectations out of these set of fixtures? Like Newcastle aside for now, after Saturday, what are your expectations from them? Because you've got some tough fixtures in there, albeit I would imagine you're expecting some points from Wolves and maybe Bournemouth, but you've got sandwiched in there Man City and Liverpool. What are you thinking?
Yeah, we've beaten Wolves already this season, and that was in the cup, the Carabao Cup. Wasn't an easy game though, and they've obviously been. I don't think they had a defender. They were all injured or whatever it was, and we still led 2 goals against them. We were really unimpressive for a little part of that game. So that's not a given to pick up points. Liverpool's going to be interesting purely because it's going to be 2 games against them on the bounce, and I think we play them. I think it's only like 3 days apart or something ridiculous. I don't have it in front of me right now, but we play them the second they're in the league, and I think we play them in the cup on the 30th. So yeah, like what is that, 3 days? So I don't know. Yeah, you can bring it up here. So you're gonna have them right there, probably. Yeah, 30th and the 2nd. So Wednesday and then the Saturday. Wow. So that's not going to be the same game because we're going to have some personnel changes for that. So I would hope that maybe we can do something in one of those games. I would be more than happy with a point against them in the league away. That would be incredible to get. And the cup, that's anyone's guess. Yeah. Man City, we don't really need to talk about what that game ends up looking like. I don't think I get a little bit annoyed when people talk about, oh, it's a free hit when you go and play Man City. I don't really believe that because they do actually look beatable this year. And I say that after they invariably going to like batter us 5-0. But this feels like the year where if you're playing at home, Man City, they've got the injuries that they have. Can we catch them on an off day? Maybe. There's a 10% chance of that. The good thing is we have, similar to you, right? Our fixture list, it gets a lot simpler on paper after that. So we then go into, we pretty much won't, after Man City, we do not play a side that's currently above us in the table again until the 30th of December, which is Villa. That's where I think our season will really be, like, that's the meat of it. Because even if we don't get, it's a good run. If we don't get too many points from these next few, you've got to get the points there. You've got to get the points there.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a hell of a run. I thought when Chris mentioned our December was decent, yours is arguably better than ours. Yeah, because we've got Man United and Villa within that, and I suppose you've got Villa in there as well. But all the rest of them, they're massively winnable games. You raise an interesting point, and I want to bring this to both clubs really. Is that you just mentioned something that's quite interesting, that, you know, you get frustrated when people talk about it's a free hit. Now, the question I've got for both sides really is any game really a free hit nowadays for our clubs, for Newcastle United and Brighton? Is any game really considered a free hit? People in the chat as well, put your opinions in, because I'm not sure. It is. Like, I don't know what you boys think, Daz, Chris, on that.
I suppose it's just a phrase. Like when we played Man City, we I think Pete, myself and yourself went for a draw. Did you go for a win, Chris?
Probably.
He doesn't remember.
Well, I think we're all pretty hopeful for that. But so yeah, it's maybe just the phrase that annoys Adam. Free hit. But it's just that you can't see a favourable outcome, or you'd be very lucky to get a favourable outcome, I suppose. But it's just an easier way to say it: a free hit.
It's a really interesting point you raised, Pete, because when you said it, my initial reaction was going to be, oh, well, it depends on the club. But even now, you know, like you even look towards the bottom of the league, you look at Wolves, you look at Crystal Palace, you look at Ipswich, teams like that. And on the day, like, they can all give everyone a game, can't they? We've seen that, you know what I mean? We've seen it. And I suppose nowadays you probably can't really say that. And Adam's right as well, you know, when he says that, like, City do feel like you can get at them. We may be laughing about that in 6 to 8 weeks' time when City go on this incredible run, which we know they're capable of. But they don't look right. And you know, people obviously have mentioned Liverpool, you know, about the fact they haven't really played anyone significant yet. The likes of Man United. The team you could argue, I suppose, which are the most difficult to play at the moment, the team I would like to avoid at the moment is probably Arsenal. They're probably the team that I would least like to play at this present moment. But I think anyone's capable of beating anyone in this league. And so, yeah, it's a good question, Pete, because we've said it ourselves on here. I remember us saying that, you know, when we've played like Man City at the Etihad or Liverpool at Anfield, and we've got, it's a bit of a free hit. We'll just see what happens. If we get anything, it's a bonus. But now I think, you know, you do look at the league and you look at the table and you think, you know what, on the day we could beat anybody, and equally anybody could beat us. And as we've seen, you know, we've picked up results against teams that we were unlikely or thought that we were unlikely to get points against, and then we've gone to, you know, like a Southampton or Wolves or an Ipswich or someone like that, and we've dropped points and we've gone, oh, okay. But I suppose you've got to look at it the other end and go, well, after 2 or 3 games, was it the Fulham game? I think it was, wasn't it? It was, we got beat by Fulham, but then we went and got a point against Man City. But if you'd said, oh, you'll get a draw away to Fulham and you'll lose to Man City, you'd have gone, oh yeah, I'll take that. So it all balances out, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So you're still of the mindset, Adam, that there is no free hit.
I say this because in the past we've been crap against the worst teams, and we've been able to pull results out against some of the bigger teams just because of the style of play. And that then sort of tells me, like, I don't think about a free hit against Man City, because I almost feel like it's just everyone just goes, oh, well, we're never going to beat them anyway, so I don't really care. So no, you can. Like, the players are able to beat those players. Like, it is doable. Like, we've seen, no one expected the Forest Liverpool result. No one expected that, right? And I'm sure Forest fans are like, that's a free hit, it doesn't matter. But, you know, it's such a weird league, especially this year, that I just don't really think it properly exists this year in particular. It's not like those years of like the Bundesliga where Bayern Munich win the Bundesliga by like 40 points. Then you can say, if you're some tiny German side, yeah, that's our free hit. Sure. I don't think it's like that in the Premier League this year.
I agree. And I think it very particular to our clubs and where we are now and where we're expected to be. Because let's not beat around the bush. Both teams are expected to be fighting out for European football this season. Like, what type of European football is still up for discussion, and I think that will continue to be discussed as we go on in the season. Top Table Talk will probably be discussing that week in, week out. 1 minute, and we get a great result, and both teams are looking at Champions League football. The next week, we get a draw, and it's Europa League. The next week, we're fighting out for Europa Conference. I think it will be like that over the course of the season. So when you're fighting at that top table, you are in a position where you have to get points where you're not necessarily expected to.
Yeah.
And I think going back to Brighton, that result against Tottenham was unbelievable. Watching that unfold as a neutral fan, I thought that was just unbelievable. So I can't imagine what you were feeling going through that motion. But then, like, to put like a slight down on it, you go back to what happened against Ipswich, where you were expected to win, and you take a point, and you're thinking, what's going on there? So it's kind of like, you have to then wait up. Chris has said the same about us, Fulham and Man City. But just on that, just before we get on to one or two things Brighton related, like you must have been on absolute cloud nine watching that. And obviously thinking of Deji whilst you were doing it.
I saw him on some of the other shows that he went on afterwards, and it was so funny watching him still trying to like mentally gymnastic his way out of it. Like, yes, we might not make third this year now. It's like, yeah, probably wouldn't. He's great though. He's worth the entry fee. So I watched that game in the town next to me has a Spurs supporters group for some unknown reason, and I went and crashed that as like the only Brighton fan there. And I tell you what, that atmosphere in the first half was not great for me. And they were, I was getting some abuse. And the second half was just to see 50 Spurs fans all experience that Spursiness at the same moment was like, honestly, like as close to Nirvana as I think I'm going to get. It was just wonderful. So the first half though was just, I'll tell you what, we were shocking. I'm sure as you guys watched it, like we were so unbelievably bad. And then came out just completely different side, the second half. And that's the side that we thought we were going to be. And that comeback was massive. I really think if we sort of bottled that second half, or rather Spurs didn't bottle that second half, you look at our results over the last 6 weeks. Yeah, we got the point against Arsenal, but it was 10 men Arsenal. So question marks. You mentioned Ipswich. You have to beat Ipswich at home. You have to beat Forest at home. We didn't do either of those. Absolutely decimated by Chelsea, and then you don't beat Spurs. You go on the international break, and everyone's like, "Who's this 31-year-old idiot manager you guys have hired? You spent 200 million. You're useless." And you're thinking, "Oh, we might have a Sami Hyypiä on our hands again. We got to redo this whole thing soon." And that game, the result in that second half was so important to change that mentality for the fan base. So it was a sweet one to witness.
Definitely. But no, you got the win. And you're up there and you're challenging, and just wanted to talk about how it's been able to happen really, and one man in particular is your manager. Is it Fabian Hertzler?
That's it.
Right? That's right. I'm glad I got it right. I think Deji gave him a different name. But look, he's come in, young manager. And he just seems to have carried on the Brighton train, what other managers have done. But what does he do different? What does he do different to De Zerbi and Potter and anyone else comes before? Because you do seem to be playing in a slightly different way to previous managers and setups.
Yeah, it's weird. So Potter was very much, we'll just hold the ball and we'll wait for an opening. And that opening might just never come. So we were sort of the XG kings, if you remember, a couple of years back. So we scored one goal, XG of 45, and we all just sat there like banging our heads against the walls. When it worked, it was amazing. When it didn't, it was a lot of question marks. De Zerbi took some of that, but then slowed it down a lot at the back and kind of brought that whole baiting the press in. And then you had these little quick moves out from the back, and you would just cut them on the counter and just make something happen there. There were still elements of Graham Potter's style in that. He just had a slightly different twist on it. Herzl is then a little bit more solid defensively than De Zerbi on paper. We didn't see that against Chelsea, but you can see his line is pushed up really high. But the way he played his previous club was to have a 5-back, and the wing backs would then cut in the midfield. You'd have one of the defensive midfielders drop in. So you almost had these banks at the back and the top, and you had no midfield. And he would sort of clear out the midfield, and you just sort of have more direct passing over from the back to the front. We haven't seen that here because he just doesn't have the players to do that at Brighton just yet. And you'll see this when we play you. There's a chance that we get really, really hurt by the pace that you guys have at the top end of the pitch, because you're going to be playing against Lewis Dunk and Igor. Both Van Hecker and Webster are out injured still. As soon as those guys step up, I mean, they are not quick. So there's a decent chance there that it makes something happen. But on the flip side, your defense and the goalkeeper are going to be under a lot of pressure, because that's Hurtzler's whole thing. Heavy press up top. Don't let the ball get out, and just hope it doesn't end up at the other end of the pitch.
Boys, pray that Isak's fit.
Yeah,
we need Isak in the team from what Adam is saying. But look, we'll flip to. I tell you what we'll do. We'll come to some questions, because there's already a load of questions coming in for yourself, Adam, and talking Brighton. So we'll have a few questions from there, and then we'll flip to Newcastle before we go to the tactics board. So, what questions have we got? Because I've seen some good ones.
Some good ones here. I'm going to go to this one. This one's caught my eye straight away. And this comes from Jordy Tune for Life. Question for Adam: would you rather qualify for European football this season, or go to Wembley in a cup final with a 50-50 chance of winning?
That's an interesting question, isn't it? Well, I guess with the cup final, you then have the extra chance of obviously qualifying for Europe, right? If you win it. So there's this 50% chance there of the silverware and European football versus just the European football. So I guess I take the cup run. The European football, though, we've got PTSD from the last time, because it was amazing, obviously, to have that European run. But what it did to the team at the end of the season was so bad. With the depth that we had and the injuries lack of depth that we had and the injuries we had at the end. It's almost like, I don't know whether next season is honestly too soon for another European run for this club. We've brought in a lot more depth to the club, obviously, by spending a lot in the summer. But I worry whether it's a year too soon, especially with this, again, a manager that's still figuring out his players, figuring out his tactics in the Premier League as well.
Interesting.
Cool. So gamble is what Adam's going to do. He's going to go.
Yeah, you got to gamble, right? Yeah.
Write this question down as well for Kieran Maguire when he's next back on with us. That's a good question. Right. Next one comes from Carpal, and he goes, "What's the Brighton fellas' thoughts on Menta?" Cheers, mate. I think he's referring to you, Adam.
Yeah, I'll take that. I've been called worse. Minte was really good right at the start of the season. He was excellent against Everton, which, I mean, quite a lot of players are, though. And then he sort of fell off a little bit. He started to then come back. I thought it was really effective in parts against Spurs as well in that second half. His work rate is amazing. Again, I know you guys know a lot about the player. I know he didn't play for you, but I know you guys know a lot about the player. So you sort of, you know what we've seen. He's always willing to take on someone. Doesn't always beat them, but he will do it again and again and again and again. His tracking back is really good as well. I've been impressed with him when he's come on as a sub to inject some energy in. I know it's a bit cliche to say that you bring on a guy with a pace towards the end of the game, but it works. And it's nice for us to have a bit of a wealth of talent at right wing, whereby we can start doing that with him. So we play a Dinger at right wing as well sometimes. You've obviously got Minte there. We've got Brajan Gruda, who had his debut, was unimpressive, but came on at the end against Spurs. And we've got Solly March, who will ultimately come back from injury in a couple of weeks as well. He's back in training. So we've got 4 players that can play right wing. And I think that will be a really big benefit to him this season as he gets up to speed in the Premier League, where he starts to get used to how we can impact games, not for the whole 90 minutes, but maybe for 20, 30 in certain parts of the game. I fully expect him to play 90 against you this weekend now and score 2 goals, because if you play Football Manager, that's the only outcome, right?
Don't talk about Football Manager. Delayed till next year.
Delayed, yeah. They've got a lot of heat.
Yeah. I started back on FM24. I only played it in November. I haven't got a chance, but I said, if this international break, I'd have a couple of goes at it. But that's for another.
You didn't put Tuchel as England manager in the game. That'd be weird, wouldn't it?
No, but I'll go off on a mad tangent to tell you about it. So I'll waste half an hour.
What do we think? Like, just initial thoughts. We might as well just cover it now. A few people mentioned it in the chat. Tuchel as manager of England. Obviously, Daz, you're not really going to care. but like just in general, lads, what do we think about that move? I'm buzzing. I'm not gonna lie. As an England
Go on,
fan.
Chris. You go first. Yeah.
I think it's a very astute signing for the manager. I think Tuchel will be really, really good. I think tactically he's one of the best out there. Like, you know, I think the big thing with him is I hope he's going to be willing to make the tough decisions. I don't think you're going to see Tuchel at the next tournament, you know, bring 5 right backs. It's just not going to happen. I think he'll be ruthless, and I think that's what you need. What I do think, though, and I'll segue a little bit on this. I think it's a brave appointment by England, appointing a German manager. I know that shouldn't really matter, but I do think it's quite a brave appointment. But what's the reason for I'm saying I'm going to segue a little bit is it has pissed me off this afternoon the way you see, like, you know, the likes of Carragher and Gary Neville coming out and saying, oh, you know, why haven't they signed an English manager? And, you know, it's as if, you know, their party's been spoiled, because I think they both thought Howe was going to get it, and perhaps that would derail Newcastle a little bit. But I do find it quite odd that someone like Neville, who's worked under Sven-Göran Eriksson, under Fabio Capello, then says, oh, it should be an England manager. And you think, well, you know, you didn't have a problem when you were being managed by, you know, foreign managers. And also, I think it's a bit lazy to say, you know, because England, let's be honest, England is one of the, you know, from a manager point of view, not just England manager, but any manager, it's one of the biggest jobs in football. The squad that we've got at the moment, like, it could go anywhere. It could win anything. You could argue that strength and depth wise, England's squad is one of, if not the strongest squad in world football. So for England to go out and want to bring in the right man, the person who can manage the team, you know, like some people are mentioning like Sean Dyche and stuff like that, and it's like, come on, it's just not going to happen, is it?
Yeah, I had Steve Bruce's name be
Steve Bruce.
Honestly, it's crazy. I mean, if you were going to go English manager, you would Eddie Howe should be top of that list, and then arguably, you know, Graham Potter could be someone. But if you're going to go for the best in class, Tuchel's right up there. He really is. And if he can't get a tune out of these England players, then I'd love to know who can, because, you know, he's got the CV, he's got the credentials, he's got the big game mentality. You know, he's managed some of the top clubs in the world. So for him to come in and, you know, have the opportunity to do it, I think it's a really good appointment. But I must caveat that with, I think it's a brave appointment, because there will be some England fans who just can't get over the fact he's German. And even if we won the World Cup, they go, yeah, but he's a German manager, he's a foreign manager. But that's a risky take, I suppose, and maybe people will forget that if we do end up lifting, you know, the World Cup. But I think it's a good appointment, and I think I must say as well, I think he spoke really well today. I only caught a little segment, but I thought he spoke really, really well. It doesn't surprise me, because he is very much a people person. He comes across like that, and I think if he carries on saying the right things but being ruthless and making the right decisions, it could be a really good appointment.
Ads, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got too many thoughts on this whole thing, because it is a really interesting one. But a question for you: how are you guys feeling? And are you happy that Howe obviously hasn't been poached, or were you sort of hoping that maybe, like, would you have rather had Tuchel at your club?
It's a good question.
Ooh, that is a very good question.
Good question.
Well, boys, I'll let you go.
Okay. Well, no. I still want to stick with Eddie Howe. I want to see how the partnership with Paul Mitchell is going to go into January now. I think Howe has unfinished business at Newcastle. Let him win something with Newcastle, hopefully. Let him get us into Europe next season first, before we go any further. But then, yeah, you'd love to see him win something at Newcastle, and then go and do something with England later in life. And he's young enough to be able to do that as well. And you know how it works with England as well. They go for a foreign manager, then they don't win the World Cup or the European Championships, and then they go for an English manager, and then they go for maybe an English manager again, back to a foreign manager again. So they'll keep chopping and changing until they find to see if they can find the magic ingredient.
Yeah, you know what? For me, I think it's a really good question, actually, Adam, because us football fans, we can be quite fickle, and if you'd asked us at a certain point, we might have gone, because I think the unrest has been unsettling. In that, Paul Mitchell's come in. Apparently Eddie Howe and Paul Mitchell weren't getting on. They weren't talking. Then they were talking, but then they didn't speak that much. And all this drama going on. And ultimately, when a new hierarchy comes in, they normally want their man. Now, we know that PIF were looking at Emery. And then obviously we ended up with Howe, which turns out really well. And Eddie Howe's been great. So I don't want Eddie Howe to be kicked out the door. But you could argue that if Eddie Howe was to take the England job, he'd leave with the best wishes of all Newcastle fans. It would all be rosy. Everything would be fine. And then you'd go out, and we'd probably go out and get that top tier manager. And then really there would be no excuses, because there's some people who still maintain that Eddie Howe can't take us where we want to go. But really, as a bit of a cop-out, but only time will tell, what happens with Eddie Howe, because I think there's a lot of pressure on him this season. I think we've made a reasonably good start to the season, but come the end of the season, if we find ourselves outside of that top 7, it could be that Eddie Howe's, on the chopping block, and then we go out and find a new manager, and we might look back and go, wouldn't Tuchel have been good? Wouldn't he have been a really good appointment? Because there isn't that many at the moment top managers out there, in my opinion. Certainly ones who would actually come, like the likes of your Ancelotti and people like that. There's not many who you could try and tempt away. But the fact that Tuchel was out of a job, managers like that don't stay on the market very long. So I can't really answer your question, but only time will tell, and maybe when you're next back on for the away days, you might feel a bit differently. But
yeah, try and trade for him.
Yeah, I think if Eddie Howe had taken the England job this summer, I would have absolutely loved Tuchel at Newcastle United, because they are quite similar in their style and approach to management. Tuchel is obviously that level above, because not only has he put trophies in the cabinet, as Chris has said, he's a high-profile manager, so he commands respect. He can bring players in just off his name. Harry Kane just the other day was talking about him yesterday. In fact, talking about him so glowingly because of their year together that they had at Bayern Munich last year. Like, he's got that effect, and that's ultimately, I think, why England have brought him in, because he's a top-level manager. The top players like your Kanes, your Bellinghams, and all the rest of it are going to respect him like they respect their own club managers. Ancelotti, Pep Guardiola, they will respect him along the same way in which they will trust him to be able to get the best out of them. And so that connection there just makes sense. And of course, you as Chris said, you're absolutely right, Chris. Like, managers like that don't stay around for long. And they had to act now. I think ultimately England wanted Pep Guardiola next summer, but there's never a guarantee that Pep Guardiola is going to be available next year, and it's a risk to wait for that to happen and then it not happen, because I can guarantee that if they'd have not gone for Tuchel now, Tuchel would not be available next summer to take that job, and so then you're stuck. Who are you going to go for? And
Pete,
then
Pete, can I just ask you a dead quick question, and the panel as well? Do you think England would have acted as swiftly as they have if that Greece game hadn't happened?
No, and this is why I think
it was done before. I think.
Yeah, it was done before. I heard that as well. It was, but it just wasn't made public. It was.
Yeah, it kept it under wraps.
So it was actually the deal was done before the Greece game.
Yeah, it was done.
That's why. That's why Carsley was kind of cagey when he was being asked different things about it as well, and he was kind of linking back to the under-21's job.
I think that's also, it could explain it in the other direction, as in that's why he went screw it, I'm going to just randomly play these players here, we'll do a false 9, so I've got nothing to lose, I'm going to get my under-21's job back.
Maybe that was part of the plan. You have such a bad game, and not necessarily the result, but you do something really outlandish that people in the media are going, and fans are going, what?
Free hit.
And then you bring someone.
Free hit. That actually is a free hit. Yeah.
And then you bring someone in as tactically astute as Tuchel, and everyone goes, "Wow, like that is that is a good appointment. The one thing I'll say, just before I talk about Eddie Howe really quickly, the one thing I'll say is I think it's an absolute disgrace how the media have treated Thomas Tuchel since he's been announced as being close to being manager and then being appointed. I think some of the articles that have been written, and there's been multiple, about Thomas Tuchel and in going into his personal life before he'd even stepped foot into Wembley, before he'd even done his press conference, I think is an absolute disgrace. And I think it's just absolutely typical of the British media, the national media, should I say, because they are already daggers out for him before he's even managed a game. He's not even going to manage a game until March, I believe. Like, why do we do this? Why do we do this? You know what? Criticize him all you want if he underperforms and he doesn't do what he's meant to do. But geez, give him an opportunity to get his feet under the table. Give him an opportunity to actually manage the team and show what he's all about. Because ultimately, you're right to a point. I think Chris, you mentioned if we win the World Cup, you get small percentage, 1% of the English population of fans that will go, oh, but he's German and blah blah blah. Yeah. The other 99% are not going to care. They're going to be partying in the streets. They're going to be looking at something historic, something that's not been seen in our lifetimes and many others. And I just think it's really, really harsh of how they've treated him. Ultimately, Eddie Howe, I think he's not given them any interest to talk to him about the job, because I think he understands how big the Newcastle United job is. Yeah. This is a job that he can't just walk away from. If he'd have put the Carabao Cup on the mantle at Newcastle United 2 years ago, I think it may well have been a different story, because he's come in and done what he needed to do. He's come in, revamped the squad and the team, made us play fantastic football and put a trophy on the table. He would still have gone with our blesses. He still would have had some sort of statue there because he brought that alluded trophy that we've wanted for so many years. He still feels there's work to be done at Newcastle United. And ultimately, he may not get that opportunity again to manage with a club that has the resources and the potential that Newcastle are looking to have in the years to come and what we currently have. He may well not get that opportunity again. And I think that's one of the things that may well have kept him at the club. Could be wrong, but that's just kind of my opinion on it. And for me, I think that may well signal that things are okay at the club. Paul Mitchell, Eddie Howe, that we're moving in the right direction, which can only be a good thing.
I wonder if he did talk to the FA. The FA came out and said they interviewed 10 managers.
Apparently, Alan Shearer said that he's heard from a reliable source that they didn't even have a conversation. He wasn't interviewed.
But surely,
Shearer said he said it was weird. He found it weird, but ultimately, what's also been reported, sorry, Chris, is that he hasn't given them any interest or want to even have that conversation. So maybe because they knew that wasn't going to be the case, maybe they've just gone, you know what? There's no point having the conversation with him. I don't know.
Yeah,
sorry, Chris.
You can't. I was just going to say, you can't tell me if they've interviewed 10 people that Eddie Howe isn't on that top 10 list.
Yeah, it's got to be, right?
Yeah. So I think you're spot on when you say that. Clearly, maybe the feelers were put out and he's gone. No, and in fairness, we always like a bit of devil's advocate talk on this channel, don't we? And we shared different opinions on it. And I know at one time we were saying, it'd be difficult to not back the England job. But then on the other hand, we know that Eddie Howe is very much a club man and he's still very young in terms of being a manager. So would it suit him? But I'm fairly confident to say that if England has a conversation with Eddie Howe and Eddie Howe even showed the remotest little bit of interest, he'd definitely be on that list to get interviews, 100%.
Just one thing to note in all this England talk, Lee Carsley missed a trick. He should have taken his free hit against Ireland. We would have had a statue for him and we would have had a public holiday. Missed that one.
He screwed up.
Yeah.
As much holidays as you then, Pete.
Yeah, nearly. One thing I do wish, though, that Lee Carsley would have given Tino Livramento his first cap. I was kind of praying that he was going to be given the opportunity against Finland. He's been drafted into the 21s. Does Kyle Walker really need to play? against Finland when we're 2-0 up? Does he really just, I don't really get it. I don't even know whether Kyle Walker's even going to make the World Cup. Like, I genuinely don't think he'll be a player that will be considered. That's just my opinion. Fantastic right back, been great.
Starting to fall off, isn't he?
But massively, to the point where a lot of Man City fans are going, yeah, I think it's probably time he moves on. He's obviously got lots going on in his personal life, has been reported in the last 24 hours or so. I just thought, give Future an opportunity, give him his first cap, give him a little taster of the Nations League and full international football. That just give him so much confidence. We see what it's done with Anthony Gordon. It's giving it. He walks around now with his shoulders up, like he feels like he's part of that squad now. He feels, and I think just giving Tino that cap, I think would have just really kicked him on. But it's one of those things.
Tuchel's going to be different now, isn't he? Like as you said, he's very pragmatic. The weird thing is every job he's had has ended in like explosions, but for the most part, I think the only job that he sort of left of his own accord was when he was originally at Mainz, maybe something like early days. Yeah, Daz is getting excited. But the reason why I think this probably works in his favor, though, right? And I know he signed the 18-month contract. Is I'm wondering whether his style of managing his players is incredibly intense. He gets the best out of them, but he's like a drill sergeant. They end up hating him, and he seems to rub the sort of hierarchy the wrong way as well. He did that at Bayern. That's why he got kicked out there. He sort of did that at Chelsea as well, so he got kicked out there. With England, he's not seeing the players as often. And he's more distanced from the FA. So he's going to see those players every couple of months. He'll be able to sort of instill his sort of designs and his tactics. He's a tactical mastermind. Like, he's far and away, in my opinion, the best managerial option that was reasonably on the market. The fact that England's been able to get him, for me, is like a massive coup. And ideally, it's an English manager. Like it, you have to have English players. You should probably have an English manager, but it's not like this is the first time. We did it with Sven, we did it with Capello, but this is the most exciting English manager we've signed since Capello. I think Capello had come off winning the La Liga with Real Madrid, I think, and then took the England job. But he's a winner. It might blow up, but hopefully it blows up just after the World Cup win.
Yeah. I mean, he's gonna make them difficult decisions, and like we've seen previously, we've seen from previous managers, there's very much. I got the impression, certainly from Southgate, that it was like, the boys' club, the old boys' club. Yeah. I've got to pick Calvin Phillips, or I've got to pick Maguire, or I've got to pick. I don't think Tuchel's going to do that, and I hope he doesn't. I hope he comes in and he basically has conversations with certain players and just says, "Listen, you're not in my plans. That's it." And I hope that he does that. I mean, the whole left back debacle during the Euros, the fact that we took a half-baked Luke Shaw, and there was no other left back in that squad, and then we were playing Kieran Trippier at left back. It's like, certainly for the English national squad, you can't tell me that like a Tyrek Mitchell couldn't have done a job, or a Vito Henry. It's poor. So hopefully Tuchel comes in, and I do hope he creates like a little bit of a whirlwind, and he does, put some noses out of joint, because sometimes when you're in those really high managerial positions, you've got to make the tough decisions, and some people aren't going to like them, but that's what winners do. That's what successful people do. They make the tough decisions, and as long as the end goal's achieved.
Great question here, right? From Harper. He says, who will win a trophy first? Us, as in Newcastle. We'll throw Brighton in there as well. Us, Brighton, or England.
Jeez. Well, you guys have an English manager, so you can't win statistically. It's never happened, right?
Until now.
Yeah.
Until now. But it's a good question. It's a good question.
Good question.
It's interesting. I tell you what we'll do. I know there's some other good questions in there, but we'll go to the tactics board now. We'll jump to the tactics board, and then we'll come back to some of those questions.
Yeah, we'll think on that.
The tactics board's up. Brighton team is there. I believe I've got everyone in the squad. If I've missed out someone, I apologize. But Adam, talk us through your start 11 that you think will play on Saturday.
Yeah, you'll definitely have Verbruggen in goal, even though he made a mistake against Spurs. You're not going to see Jason Steele. Left back's going to be a weird one, because we've been changing this every single game. I think it's probably going to be Estupinian.
He's come back in recently, hasn't he?
He has. He was out injured for a while. His form took a dip, and then we signed more players that could play there. We started with Hinshelwood playing left back, and Kadioglu played there a little bit. I think it's going to be Estupinian. I would then say it's going to be Lewis Duncan, Igor. I know people are laughing at Igor's name. I tell you what, if he was standing in front of you, you wouldn't laugh at his name. The guy is an absolute machine. He's one of the biggest, muscliest football players I think I've ever seen. And then at right back, I'm thinking it's Joel Veltman that's going to be playing there.
Okay. Adam, I have a question for you, right? Anytime I've seen Brighton, they do really well at playing out from the back. Can that work with the personnel that you've put in there?
Yes, it can work. Because I mean, Estupinian and Duncan Veltman have played together a lot. Igor's the only one that doesn't get all that game time. The good thing about Igor is because he's left-footed, he allows Lewis Dunk to play on the right side of centre-back. Normally, he's forced to play on the left side of centre-back because Van Hecker wants to play on the right. Dunk is better on the right-hand side. So it actually creates a slightly better setup for us by doing it like that. These guys know each other well. I don't have any problems playing out from the back. I say that hoping we don't screw up against you. It's more about the pace coming the other way. When you guys get the ball back when we've lost it up the other end of the pitch, because like I said, Igor and Dunk are not pacey. Veltman's not the fastest, and Estupinian gets caught out of possession a lot. He's quick, but not that quick.
Do you play quite a high line then?
A suicide line, yeah, it's unbelievable. Really? Like, it really is crazy. That's what it was referred to against Spurs and Chelsea. I mean, if you watched the Chelsea game,
I did.
It was just.
But that's why I've asked you.
Ridiculous.
Because I wasn't sure if that was a one-off or whether that's something that you do game in, game out under the new manager.
No, that's a question we were asking about the manager as well, because we sort of said, surely against some teams, you got to drop the line a little bit deeper. And nope, didn't really do that. Didn't really do that against Spurs either, as you saw. The thing is, when it works and the players do what they're told, and there was an interesting thing that came out from that Spurs game. I think a lot of people were thinking, well, what did Hertzler do at halftime? Like, what tactical changes did he make to move things around? And, you know, what did Spurs do to... Hertzler came out afterwards and basically said, we didn't really change anything. I just told the players to do their jobs more effectively, press harder, go and win those balls the first time as opposed to being second best to them. Like, try more, basically. I know that sounds really basic, but that's what this setup is. Like, if you're working harder than the other team, it works because that press works up the top. You're getting less burden being placed on the back line, which is not the best at the moment, and they can do their job. And it's a matter of we'll score more than you. That's the whole setup for Hertzler at the moment. It's not a million miles away from what And wants to do at Spurs. It's not working.
Okay, so. What have you got in front of you then? You've got your defence there. What's your midfield looking like?
Well, this is tricky. So our best player this season has been Carlos Baleba. And he got stretchered off in the first game for playing for Cameroon in the international break. But he was on the bench for the second. Yeah. So we're hoping he's fit. And if so, he's playing for sure. Then it comes down to whether we play Hinshelwood here alongside him, or whether we play Weaver next to him as well. Weaver are a little bit more defensive-minded than Hinshelwood. Hinshelwood would rather get forward a little bit more. I could honestly see Weaver come in here and play, but wouldn't be shocked if Hinshelwood is there instead. Obviously, if Baleba's injured, then the decision's sort of made already. But that's what I think it will be there. You'll play those two holding midfielders.
Interesting. So will it look like this then? Will it be like a sort of a midfield two? How do you kind of set up in that midfield?
Yeah, he's been playing pretty much a 4-2-3-1 the whole season at the moment, because that front unit is the one that it does a lot of the work, and that's the exciting part of the team. Obviously, Baleba gets forward a lot. Weaver will sit deeper if those are the ones that will play, and Baleba will sort of be more of a box to box. Weaver will be more of a sort of an anchor man in that group. So sometimes with the ball, that will turn into, you'll see Igor and Dunk and Weaver centrally as a 3, when we have possession. Veltman and Estupinian. Veltman will come inside and be a sort of inverted fullback. Estupinian will bomb up the left and try and overlap with Matoma, and Baleba will push on. And then you'll basically have that sort of setup that I said a little bit earlier, where it's like you've got a defense and an attack, and then sort of a gap
in the middle. Yeah. Okay, so talk us through the rest of your team then. How's it setting up? Who are you going for?
Matoma is on the left. He's playing very well at the moment. Very well. He was good for Japan as well in the game last week too. So he's in good form. Our arguably best player is out in João Pedro. So you'll see Ruta in the sort of 10 role.
Done well,
got him hard in there. There he is.
Yeah, done well.
And yeah, but he was a real difference maker against Spurs in that second half. And then you're going to have Danny Welbeck up top. Again, playing at some of the form of his career, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, he is.
To the point where Man United want him back. Saying
Johnny Evans.
Well, that'll be one way to get him to retire, I guess. And then we'll have, and then I think it's going to be your boy on right wing.
Minter. Yeah, you think he'll start? Is it a case he has to start?
I think he'll start. Yeah, I think he'll start. He scored on the international break as well. It's a weird goal. A long way out. Yeah, so I think that's what it will be. It would be a lot different if we didn't have all the injuries that we have, and some of these players have knocks as well. Like I mentioned, I think Adingra has got a little bit of a knock. Ruta also has from the last game against Spurs, but he should be okay. We obviously don't have João Pedro, as we mentioned. Evan Ferguson's not found his form yet, Daz, as you know as well. Again, Van Hecker is out. He'd be playing. We've not had Matt O'Reilly for the whole season after he got assassinated against Crawley. So yeah, and Milner's on one of his various sort of weekly injuries at the moment. So he's the other one that might come in.
Okay. Gruder as well. You got to come back in.
Gruder might come on as a sub, but Yasin Ayari is a guy that I think will probably come on if we're a goal down against you in the second half. He's playing really, really well. Young Swedish guy. Again, I think he played with, normally played with Isaac, right? It wasn't for injuries or anything. And he's been really, really impressive. Really talented sort of central attacking midfielder. His passing and his interplay between that front group is really, really, really good. So he's come on leaps and bounds. Last year he was on loan in the Championship. We didn't have massively high hopes, and he's just been a completely different player this year. So I think we'll probably see a little bit of him, and we might see a Adingra or Gruder come on in the second half if we need a goal.
Okay. So that's your team set. Brighton, boys, it's time to pick Newcastle United's team. Be interesting to see who is there. Just as an interesting one, Lewis Miley back in training. Great to see. But interestingly, considering we were told he was injured, Kieran Trippier has been in training too. So that was pictured today or put out by the club today. So for someone who's meant to be out for weeks is on the training field with the ball at his feet, who knows? Could be back in. So I'm putting them in there because obviously you guys are about to choose the team, and I wanted to throw a bit of a spanner in the work. So yeah, what we thinking, boys? You want to do it together, individually, critique, fly away?
Chris, you pick, and if I have a problem with your selection, I'll shout. No pressure. You're on mute. Already I have a problem.
Just realised that. Yeah, that's the first problem. Yeah, no, that sounds good. So, okay, well, I'll go with Nick Pope in between the sticks.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Tino Livramento at right back. Okay. Granted, we've seen the pictures of Trippier ball. I don't know. I think, and particularly Matoma, very, very pacey. It might be wise putting Tino Livramento there. I hope it's going to be Dan Burn and Fabian Schär at centre back.
Okay. Yeah.
I think up against Minter. I hope it's Lewis Hall
Pace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who is it if
absolutely.
it isn't Lewis Hall, Chris?
You could argue it'd be Lloyd Kelly, who isn't slow, but I don't think he's as quick as Lewis Hall. And Lloyd Kelly would probably be the safer defensive option. But from what we've seen, the little that we've seen of Lloyd Kelly, and boys, tell me if you think I'm wrong, he looks far more assured at left centre back from what I've seen. Looks a little bit more exposed at left back, I'd say.
He's played.
Yeah, but he's good at like a up against a damage thrower type. I know who's fast as well, but just more physical, you know. But I would agree with your selection here on Lewis Hall, the left back.
I'd choose Hall personally, but I actually think Lloyd Kelly's quicker off the mark. I think he's got more pace, but Lewis Hall's better with the ball at his feet. I think he travels probably quicker with the ball at his feet than Lloyd Kelly does. But I think raw pace, I think Lloyd Kelly's probably faster than Lewis Hall. But
he's probably more powerful, isn't he, Pete? You're probably right. He's more of a powerful kind of runner than Lewis Hall. I know what you're saying. Like he's I think over distance, I think it would probably be Lewis Hall, but certainly that burst of power, energy, Lloyd Kelly would probably get off quicker, wouldn't he? Probably.
Am I right in thinking that we've never had a training session with Minta as a Newcastle player? He just went straight to Feyenoord, then straight to Brighton.
Yeah. He didn't fly out, did he, on the pre-season? I think there was talks of it happening, but I don't think he did.
No,
he didn't. He didn't.
They're not going. Lewis Hall's not going to know what hit him.
I think the midfield picks itself, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this midfield battle. I think it's going to be Big Joe on the left side of midfield.
Yeah.
I think it'll be Sandro Tonali on the right side of the midfield. I can't wait. I'm still waiting, boys, and I've seen loads of art. Yeah, that's the one, Pete. That's the one. I've seen loads of articles today when I've been on X very briefly. People saying, that Sandro Tonali was absolutely outstanding for Italy, and I'm just waiting for him to pop for us. Where you just get that performance where he's absolutely sublime, and he's been good. Don't get me wrong, he has been very good. But where you just see, like that assist he did for Italy on the last international break, just that moment of class, or that goal like he scored against Villa in the first game of the season. Yeah, that's what I'm waiting for from Sandro, and hopefully we see it against Brighton.
It's an unbelievable midfield. They're really there's not many better in the Premier League for me.
Yeah.
But when they click, so for example, it's not really been talked about against Everton because obviously we didn't win. But that midfield at times dominated Everton, absolutely dominated, like possession-wise, pace, power. It literally has the lot. And with a team that Eddie Howe's trying to make more possession-based, to have Sandro Tonali and Bruno in particular being able to get on the board and just control things, it's so good. It really is. Possession-wise, they are very, very good. Both can unlock doors. You've got the battering ram that's Joe Linton that goes around just roughing people up. It's such a good midfield. This has to be the starting midfield every week now, provided everybody's fit. It has to be.
Yeah.
But sorry, go on, Dan.
No. So this was always going to be the most difficult one, I think, in terms of what to select. But for me, I'm gonna stay positive. I'm gonna stay hopeful. I think it's going to be Anthony Gordon on the left. I think it'll be Jacob Murphy on the right, and I think it's going to be Alexander Isak through the middle. I think I know he has a broken toe, but in my opinion, I just think they've held him back. They've seen this international break and thought, you know what, let's get him right. Let's get him sorted. I know Callum Wilson's allegedly back at the weekend. It would be great to see him on the bench, but I think it would be crazy to start him, and I don't think Eddie Howe would do that. I'd hope that we see an appearance from him, maybe come off the bench or something like that. But I'd be very surprised if Callum Wilson started. And the only way I could see that is if Isak wasn't ready, but Wilson, looked fine during training. But I just think this game's been I think Alexander Isak's been kept ready for this game. You could argue, you know, there was rumours of him playing against Everton, and he didn't in the end. But I just wonder whether the physios and the coaching staff went, you know what, let's just save him. Let's just get him right. He's going to miss, obviously, the internationals with Sweden. Let's get him right and get him ready for this Brighton game. And I think that's what's going to have happened.
Yeah, get him right, because we know Kyle Wilson's going to fall over again any second. And then he didn't have to go on in international duty then as well. I can see what you're doing there, Chris. You're kind of saving Barnes from off the bench. Personally, if it was I would go for Barnes and Gordon and have them alternate right through the game. I know when Gordon isn't on the left, we don't get the best out of him, but I can see what you're doing there. It's starting with a Murphy or a Miggy, it's much the same at times. If I was making one change, maybe I'd swap Murphy with Barnes and then have them alternate.
Pete, you've got the casting vote, mate. What do you reckon? Do you think we stick with Murphy and Gordon, or do you think? But like Daz has said, do you think? And I don't disagree with what Daz is saying, by the way, because I think, you know, having Barnes on the pitch is beneficial. But do you think that's what Eddie Howe will do, or do you think Isak might not start? And do you think maybe Barnes will be in and maybe Miggy will be in? What do you think?
I actually agree that I think Eddie Howe will start with that front three with Murphy in instead of Barnes. I actually think that will be the team that he goes for, and just for the reason why is for everything that Adams just said about his setup, particularly on the back line. If you've got Harvey Barnes coming on in 60-65 minutes, who is a counter-attacking in and behind winger when players are starting to tire, like that's the perfect sub. You bring Murphy off, and you bring Barnes on to run in behind and make those runs. I think that's what they'd want. I think Murphy is lightning quick himself. He's got pace to burn. He can make those runs in and behind. His judgment in his last minute decision making in the final third isn't always great, but I think he's a good foil to start with, and then bringing somebody on. I think it will just be making sure that we've got options off the bench. You could argue that if you want to start your best, you start with Barnes. I'd still think Barnes can influence the game on the right-hand side. I think he's good enough too. But I just think in the early parts of the game, he will look to Murphy because of his defensive abilities before he considers Barnes, who isn't defensively, and I've not got an issue with it. He's not that defensive minded where he'll run back and he'll do lots of defensive recovery runs. He isn't like that. He stays high up and he looks to get that ball in behind. That's his game, always has been. So I do agree that will be the three.
Pete, just to touch on what you've said there about defensively, and you know, we've already spoken about Brighton, you know, playing quite a high line and certainly bombing forward and stuff. Do you think there's any possibility that Eddie tries to throw a spanner in the works and puts Miggy there, given he is promising cameo against Everton?
Well, Miggy played well. Miggy did all right against Wimbledon. People will say that he didn't, but I thought he did okay. He did really well when he come on against Everton. I still think he'll go with Murphy, and the reason being is that if there's an opportunity to sell Miggy in the winter, I think he'll take that opportunity. And it's a point that I mentioned to you boys after the January window at the beginning of the calendar year, is that Eddie Howe will want to make it absolutely clear that he's no longer first choice. If he starts giving him games and bringing him and making him first choice, all that's going to do is make him feel more comfortable at the club. And it sounds really horrible to say, but the club will want him to move on because they will want to bring a right winger in. And I'm convinced now that until Miguel Almiron leaves, we're not going to get a right winger in. I think it needs one to leave in order for one to come in. And so he'll have him work for his place, and he'll have him coming on and having an impact, because ultimately Miguel Almiron's fighting for his future at Newcastle United. But I don't see him starting. I'd be very, very surprised. I think Murphy is firmly ahead of him in the sort of list. But yeah, I agree with Wilson. Wilson hasn't kicked a ball since what, end of April, beginning of May. There's no way that without a preseason as well. There's no way they're going to throw him in and start. Like we're not in the Steve Bruce era anymore. Isak will play. He's had nearly 4 weeks since the injury, since Fulham.
Yeah.
It'll be about 4 weeks now, I think, or close to. Like he should be ready. He should be.
Was there any pictures of Isak, Peter? And I haven't looked at the training stuff. I didn't think there would be.
I hope there's no pictures.
Don't take any. Yeah.
Well, Adam, like this is the thing. Like people, nobody that I've looked at has even mentioned the fact that there's no pictures of Isak or Wilson because we are used to it. When Eddie Howe doesn't want to give anything away, he will not have anything be told, and it will probably be in the press conference on Friday. We'll make a late call when we know for a fact they've been training for the last week.
Plenty of pictures of Isak on Saturday night. Adam, tune in for a reaction show, celebrating pictures, hopefully.
Yeah, brilliant. No, I'm terrified of Isak. I definitely would rather not. Like, if he can't go, is it the same front three you played against Everton?
Gordon up top, Barnes and Murphy. I'd probably say so. I don't know about you boys.
Yeah, I think it'd have to be. Yeah, I think it would have to be. Yeah. Going back to what you've just said as well, you know, about there being no pictures of Isak and Wilson. That also was why I went for Tino. The fact that we saw the picture of Trippier, because it wouldn't surprise me if Trippier was like training on his own and they've gone, go ahead, take a picture of him so they think he's fit. It just wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, possibly.
What's because I haven't seen Livramento play a ton of football. I mean, I've seen probably a little bit more of it when he was at Southampton. I remember a game where he was pretty devastating. Defensively, how's he been for you? Because that grouping of Matoma and Estupinian, we normally then bring another midfielder over to that left side and basically just try and overload the right back. How's he going to cope with that?
Oh, good question.
If the ball up, he'd be grand. Don't worry about it.
But he's good going forward. I've seen him going forward. He's excellent. I'm more just thinking like, how well does he deal with, a grouping like that?
I'm not necessarily worried about him defensively. He's already proven since he come to the club he can put out some real good defensive performances. I remember when he came on against Tottenham, he literally locked down our right-hand side and stopped anything coming down the left from Tottenham perspective. He's done it before. I'm not worried about that. And the reason why I'm not worried is because like this guy will come in. He'll come in and shore things up. And defensively and tracking back, Tonali is brilliant. And this is why he'll start, because he's got the pace to come back in. So if you say, for example, load it up here and you bring Weaver, for example, in, or Belieber, or whoever it is, into that section to try and overload, what we'll do, and this is what we tend to do, this is kind of like clockwork, they'll bring in these here, and it's the same on the other side. And it tends to be Bruno Guimaraes that goes over, because what we tend to do is leave Gordon a little bit higher for the counter, with Isak up there. So we've got that pace on the counter to break across. So I personally don't see it as an issue. I think they've got more than enough know-how about them to kind of deal with it. But that's just from my perspective. I think that's how Newcastle United will combat the overload of that right-hand side. But like Livramento's dealt with some top players already this season. So I'm not overly worried. And even if Trippier started, I know Matoma's quick and he's trickery, but Trippier did a fantastic job on Jack Grealish. Apart from the goal where it took a little ricochet back into his path in order to set up the goal for Man City, like Trippier was excellent. Like he nailed him down. So either one of them, I'm not worried. They've just got different qualities. Like Livramento's recovery pace he's got pace to burn. The only way you'll probably get in is if he makes one of his long busting runs to come and support in the attack, and we get caught this way, because Tonali likes to drift in and around to try and pockets of space. That's where on the counter here, and what we don't want here is then Shaw coming out and being isolated, which at times he has been. And he's capable of dealing with the one-on-one, but we don't want Shaw here. We need him here because he's the first port of call. Anything from Mitoma down here, putting the ball into the box, Shaw's normally first port of call here to recover the ball.
Yeah,
and that
I was
a Burn Welbeck one-on-one, which sounds weird, but I'd always be confident in Dan Burn doing the job. I think he's been really good this season. I think he's had a good start to the season. He's played well. So yeah, that's just me.
I was going to add just to when you were talking about Livramento, when in terms of one-on-one defending Adam, like if he's got someone running at him, I feel really confident because Tino defensively is really, really good. The one part of his game I feel he needs to work on is like positionally, because like Pete says, sometimes he gets a little bit overexcited or he switches off just for the seconds, and then you can see him look back and go, "Ooh, need to get back in position." And but he's still only young. He's just got to learn that. But one-on-one, facing on from an attacking winger or an attacking midfielder, I normally fancy Tino in those defensive situations. It's very rare that we saw it in the Champions League, didn't we, boys? He was coming up against Adeyemi and players like of that ilk, and he was dealing with them like it wasn't a big issue. One-on-one, Tino's pretty good defensively, touch wood. It's more when he ventures forward and then you go, oh, why is he there? He should be back. And then you see him sprinting back, but sometimes it's too late.
I'm excited to see that battle, and I'm excited to see the battle on the other side as well, because I feel like that's where we'll do our damage. And I mean, your central midfield grouping, their ability to sort of overwhelm our central midfield is going to be there for the taking. And then I'm assuming sort of spread out wide to Gordon or Murphy. That's going to be doable. Our hope against you is can we capitalize on the wings? And I'm assuming you guys are going to have a lot of the possession. We've been pretty big on possession. I think we're third or fourth in the league in terms of possession stats at the moment, but we didn't have much against Spurs in that first half. We didn't have much against Chelsea because we're away as well. I think you had nearly 70% against Everton away. So I'm assuming you're going to have a lot of the ball. I think we're going to try and get that ball out to the wings quickly and see if we can do some damage on the break.
Yeah. But this is the thing, Adam, is that we've had a lot of possession in games this season, but we haven't capitalized on it. And this is our problem. We seem to be missing that little bit of cutting edge for all the possession that we have. 70-80% against Everton, we just didn't have that cutting edge, that final ball, that final finish to put
didn't have a striker.
Yeah, didn't have a striker, absolutely. But even when Isak's played, we had a
get the ball to him
against Fulham. We need to supply the ammo. We need to give him the opportunities to score. So the final ball needs to be better. We need to use the ball better. We almost benefit from playing counter-attacking football, and that will be the interesting thing. Would it be the case where we go to Brighton? Go on, you have the ball. You have the ball.
Right.
You try and break us down with your high line. We'll try and capture on the break. If we do that,
we hate.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing. We did that against Wolves last season at St. James's Park in early March. Wolves with Neto and all the rest of it pushed us, had all of the ball, and then bang, once, twice, hit them on the counter, 2-0 up at halftime.
Yeah.
Winning the game 3-0. Because they brought all their players forward because they thought that they were in control. But we win the ball back quickly with the guys that come in the ball back, and we're on the counter. I do think that although that's not what Eddie Howe wants us to be moving forward, I do think in this particular game, because of the high line that you play and because of the pace that we've got in those attacking areas, that might be the way to win the game.
Yeah.
But it's a case of who wins that battle, who gives the ball away enough to the opposition.
And will you do it at home as well, right? Because there's an expectation when you're playing at home in front of fans that you have the ball and you do something with it. You take the game to the opposition. But I agree with you completely. Broadly, I feel like the Premier League has gone off possession a bit more. It's obviously you've still got sides like Man City who have that cutting edge, and it doesn't matter. They can have 80% of the ball and they'll break a team down potentially, unless it's Arsenal sitting super deep. But a lot of the other teams now have gone away from that and have done are really about sitting deep and playing on the counter now. We're seeing it a lot, and we've not been able to break down those sides at all. We saw that against Ipswich. We saw it against Forest. Chelsea, even, despite the scoreline, when you looked at it, they sat fairly deep against us. They just popped the balls over the top, and Cole Palmer just was playing out of his mind. This sitting deep and playing on the counter now is sort of a way around this whole breakdown of defense. And it feels like it's been more effective than this possession game at the moment, unless your club name is Manchester City. Even Arsenal, obviously, we're seeing it. They're sitting fairly deep a lot of the time.
No, I think that's a fair point. Look, let's wait and see. But it's going to be a fascinating game to watch, to see how tactically it comes about. And as we always do on away days, it's always interesting to see what we discuss from the opposition and Newcastle United, how it comes back. Because you know what? And Chris, as you'll know from previous shows of other clubs, it does tend to work out in ways that we kind of talk about on the show. So it'll be interesting to see how this one comes about. But
Pete,
sorry,
mate. Just before we move on, we've had a question there from Geordie Team for Life, and he says, "Question, lads. Bruno came off with a knock on his Achilles yesterday, assumingly for Brazil. I didn't realise he'd come off with a knock. So would you play Willock or Longstaff if he's out?" And then Geordie Team for Life said, "Willock for me. We need his pace." Pete? What would you, if Bruno is out and he's not available, not fit to play, who are you bringing in and who are you putting in that holding position?
I knew he'd come off, but I didn't know. I was looking at what time. He came off in the 79th minute. He's playing.
I think he's playing too.
I'm sorry,
that's hypothetical, though.
But if you had to,
if he wasn't,
hypothetically, Longstaff comes in, because what they'll do is
Canali.
So he'll come in, Longstaff here, Bruno off for a second.
Yeah, that's
this is how they'll set it up. They'll have Tonali in here because Tonali's pace and recovery to sit in this area. And what you'll probably find during the game is they'll interchange. These two can interchange, just like Tonali and Bruno do in the game. They actually naturally just interchange. So if Tonali makes a run there, Bruno will sit in. But if Bruno comes into this pocket and moves forward, obviously that's Longstaff there. Tonali will sit in and Bruno will and I think that's what they'll do. But Tonali can fill in as that deep line defensive midfielder. And let's be honest, possession-wise, you want one of your strongest passers to pick up the ball from your centre-backs because we've got Shaw that can come out with the ball, who's great on possession, but Byrne isn't. He's not good with the ball. Hall is great with the ball. Tino's not. He's not as good as is competent with the ball as Trippier. So you want someone here that's going to be able to get on the ball and add possession. If you've got Bruno Guimaraes in there, technically we're stocked with players that are comfortable on the ball. Tonali, Guimaraes, Fabian Schär, Hall. Okay, you can get away with, to a point, Byrne and Tino not being as comfortable on the ball because you've got a lot more ball players in and around the area. So I do think, from my opinion, that's kind of how it will go. That Longstaff would come in if that was the case.
Yeah,
and having Willock on the bench as well is another, like Barnes in this scenario as well. Like Isak, you probably won't depending on how the game is going. You're probably not going to want to play him 90 minutes. Maybe you move Gordon in there towards the end and bring Willock out wide, or whatever way it would suit. Maybe switch Barnes over then or something. I don't know, but it's just another advantage to us to having two strong players coming off the bench in this scenario.
Yeah,
absolutely. Just looking at that team there, so you've got the likes of Lloyd Kelly, Trippier potentially, Kraft potentially. Jamal Lewis is gone. I'll get rid of him for next time. Target, I don't think we'll ever see again, but we'll see. Joe Willock, Longstaff, Miley, Barnes, Almiron, Wilson, Asula. You've got any of those choices of 7 players on the bench? Like that's a good That's a good, strong, solid bench to choose from if you can get all of them on there. Wilson, Miggy, Barnes, Miley, Willock, Longstaff, just as a small choice there. That's good. That's good quality to come off the bench, and not all of them are going to get on. So
No.
Save a seat for Botman.
Daz,
Botman,
I wanted
Too early.
Daz, I wanted to ask if you were cut deep then, because Pete was flying through the names, and he goes to Alex Murphy, and he just skipped him, just disregarded him there, Daz.
There was talk of Alex Murphy being injured, but I saw him in the training photos as well, so he's not. He could be in there yet.
Chris trying to cause civil war over here, Adam. What was going on? Kicking off.
I'm just gonna sit.
Oh,
You guys
peace and
can.
harmony.
I'll watch it implode. I preferred the lineup you had with when Bruno wasn't playing. You can take Isaac as well. You guys got tough games coming up. You should rest him for those other games. I think that's probably the move for you.
We can rest him if we get 3 points on the board, mate. We can. We can give him a rest one of the games. But no, in all seriousness, this is a big game. I think we need to go out our strongest team possible, with the idea of having some players to come off and change the game. Wilson coming off to change the game would be massive, even if it's for 10 minutes. Barnes, Miggy, who's chomping at the bit to try and impress. I do. It's good for me, lads. Honestly, I think it's going to be a completely different game to the one that we saw at St. James's Park at the back end of last season. I think both teams are in a completely different moment to where we are now. We had struggling with injuries, struggling to put players onto the pitch. You had the De Zerbi situation, and it was kind of like, is he staying? Is he not? It was a bit all over the place.
Oh yeah.
I think both teams almost kind of played for the draw in one sense. Quite like in the end, nobody was wanting to lose more than anything. It was about saving face, particularly with us fighting for Europe. You guys were trying to just get points on the board because
stagger to the end of the season. Yeah,
it was that. So I'm mindful of time because we have gone over, but it's been a fantastic chat, by the way. Make sure you click those likes, people. Click those likes. You know what to do. You know it makes sense. If you haven't done it already, get to do that. Are you okay for a couple more questions before we do predictions, Adam, or you got to shoot?
Yeah, I've got like 5 minutes. I could do a couple and
5 minutes is perfect.
Okay, let's see. Have you seen any good ones, Chris? You could have been. Maybe this one from Alan Thompson, because there's another question linked to it as well from Tom Dixon. It's like, what would you consider a successful season for Brighton? I think Tom asked, where do you think you're going to finish this season?
Top 10 is successful. It's tough. I think there was a prediction show. Maybe we were doing a prediction show a few weeks back that we were on, and people were asking about season finishes earlier on in the season. And you looked at the teams that are in there, and you just think it's a really, really stacked top 10 in the Premier League. And so when you say top 10, I think people often think, well, you aren't thinking about Europe. So top 10 is a massive achievement. Like the sides that are now in top 10 are good sides. So I think for the first year of a new manager, a bunch of players that we brought in that aren't bedded in yet, I think that would be a success. Anything higher than that would be amazing. Anything lower than that would be a disappointment.
Yeah.
So, Chris, you have a question?
Yeah, I've got an interesting one here, and Adam, there is method in me madness to asking you this question, but Andy Ford says, Adam, I'd love a dinger at Newcastle. What would he cost us, do you reckon? And the reason I'm interested is because I can't remember if I spoke to Daz about this. I don't know whether it was after the show where it was just me and Pete, but I said it was during the window, and I said, you know what? I feel like Brighton are going to let go of one of their right wingers because you've got so many, and we were desperate for a right winger at that time. And Dinger's name came up, João Pedro's name came up. Obviously, we knew you'd already got Minter at that point. And is it Gruder? I think
Gruder,
was the other player who obviously, you know, we had a little look at one point. But you seem stocked on that right wing, so I'd be interested to see if you had to let one of them go, which one would it be? And also to ask Andy's question, how much would Adingra be if he was the one to let go?
God, it's so hard to say that because there were rumours that Arsenal were sniffing around Adingra as well at the end of the window, because you're right. It suddenly looked like we had too many players for the places that we had. The thing for where he would fit in for you, hypothetically, is you guys obviously have the left side sorted out, but you need the right side. We play Adingra on the right side, and that's all fine. But he wants to play on the left. He wants to play on the left and cut inside. That's where he played for the Ivory Coast when they won the Cup of Nations, and he was excellent there. The reason he doesn't play on the left for us is because Mitoma's there, and no one's displacing Mitoma unless he's injured. I think one of the reasons why we would want to keep him is for that. Mitoma is probably going to run out of steam at some point. He might get injured, and you want backup there. And Adingra is the guy for that. We don't have a ton of other players that really want to play on the left wing. So that's the reason why I think he's valuable to the club. He's also a really good player with lots of upside. How much would he cost? I don't even know what money means in football nowadays. It's so weird, like players that 40, 50 million. It seems like something around there would probably, just based on the upside that he has. If he has a disappointing season, he might go down to 30 or, high 20s. I think he's got a couple of years left on his contract. So there's no urgency there or anything like that. So I don't think he'd be cheap, but he's certainly not going to be like, 40, 50, 60, unless it was an amazing season. I think it'd be sort of 30 around there.
Sounds good.
That's a guess. I mean,
not bad. Who knows? Not gonna lie, it's not bad.
Who knows?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're asking for Matoma, that's a very different question.
I'm looking at a few of these questions, and I think if we start answering them, they'll lead us on to another half an hour. Case in point, Ethan, his emergency Premier League meeting being cancelled. Let's not go there. We know
that's a whole other show in itself. We could be back to discuss that at some point in the next week or so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do predictions.
We'll go for predictions. Yeah.
Let's crack on with predictions. So I'm going to start. I'll start. I think Newcastle United are going to win. Of course, I'm always going to say that. I think it's going to be 3-1 to Newcastle United.
Oh,
I think we're.
I trusted you.
I think there's going to be some goals in it. I think it will be cagey at times, but I think the attacking emphasis. It's your high line. You've sold me on the high line, mate. I'm not going to lie. So I think there could be goals in it for Newcastle United. 3-1 for me. That's what you're thinking.
I don't want an Evan Ferguson hat trick like previously. Definitely don't want that. I think 2-1 Newcastle. 2-1 to Newcastle. Minted to have an inspired game as well. Best of luck to him then after for the rest of the season. But 2-1 Newcastle.
Okay, Adam, we'll come to you.
Chris.
Oh. I think the delays for sure.
Chris, you want to go? You can round.
Yeah, go on, mate. Yeah.
I'll do it. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm sort of agreeing with you. I'm like, yeah, we could easily lose 3-1. The only reason I'm going to go slightly different is you guys have scored 8 goals the whole season. And I know there's been injuries there, but I know we'll score. It's just how many you guys are capable of scoring as well. So I'll bet on Brighton, and I'll say that we can win it 2-1. We will definitely concede. It's just who's going to score more than one on each side. So yeah, I'll go 2-1 Brighton.
Yeah.
Go on then, Chris.
I'm going to agree with Dazzler. I think it'll be 2-1, and I think Anthony Gordon's going to score, and he's going to burst out with this emotion following that Everton penalty miss. So yeah, I'm going to say 2-1, and I think Gordon's going to score.
Okay, lots of 2-1s in the house.
Safe score, isn't it? It's a safe score. I think your 3-1 though is a better. It's probably a decent guess. Like it was a 5-goal game against Spurs for us, 6-goal game against Chelsea. 3 when we were last away, obviously outside of the Arsenal game, which was a different thing. 3 against Everton. Like there will be goals. I think there will be goals.
Yeah.
Watching in them.
Yeah, 0-0.
No,
yeah,
please.
Terrible game.
Please. No, I do think there'll be goals in this. I think there'll be a lot of attacking play. I think there'll be. Yeah, I think it'll be quite feisty. I think both teams need this result. They need a result because of the games that we've got ahead of us. So yeah, I think there's a lot riding on it. But I just think players coming back after the international break, I think that's just me. Let's see. It's gonna be a good game. I think.
I tell you what, I'm not necessarily a betting man, but if I were, Joel Veltman yellow card, that is almost against Gordon. He's going to get caught out at one point, and he's going to drag him down 100%.
This is the
do the double, get J7.
Not advice.
This is what Gordon needs to do, though. He needs to do that in the box. Gordon is the master at winning a penalty because he draws in the foul. And if Veltman's a player that concedes a lot of fouls, it could be a recipe for success for Newcastle United for sure. Let's see. Adam, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming and joining us. Always a pleasure to talk to you. No doubt you'll be back on the channel with Top Table Talk at some point down the line. But look, just plug where your channel is and where people can find you, mate.
Yeah, we're on Together BHA. You can come and listen to us in our sort of victory podcast on Sunday once we've won 4-1. But no, it's you guys are all Newcastle fans, so I appreciate you're not going to want to go and listen to a Brighton podcast, but the Top of the Table Talk is awesome. That's always fun to join while we're still in the top of the table. It's nice to be a part of that. So no, it's always great coming on here. So I really appreciate it. And the questions and the comments from everyone, appreciate that as well. You guys are great.
Top stuff.
Nice one, Adam.
That's it. That's our lot. Now we wait. We wait for the big game to come in and kick in and see what it delivers. But it's been a pleasure. Massive thanks to Adam again. Daz, Chris, pleasure as always. And let's take it home.
Yeah, we're back Saturday night for the reaction. Let's hope it's a positive reaction. But since we have Eddie for a while longer, I think we have to play out with the how. Good night, everyone. See you pretty soon. How drink it.